Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us to learn how to go from awareness to action, reducing human risk with AI. Before we get started, I'd like to mention two quick housekeeping items. If you have questions during the presentation, please submit them in the Q&A tab, and we'll be sure to respond to your questions via email after the webinar. Second, please note the attachments tab, where you'll find resources related to today's topic to download, including a link to our free email security risk assessment. During today's webinar, we'll begin looking at the current state of security awareness training, what's working, what isn't, and why traditional approaches continue to leave employees exposed. We'll dig into the challenges security leaders are facing when it comes to human risk management, and from there, we'll explore how AI can transform this space. That's the journey we'll be taking through over the next hour. With that in mind, let's jump in and introduce ourselves before we start to talk about some of the challenges at hand. My name is Sydney Ganji. I'm a senior product marketer here at Abnormal AI.
And I'm Patty Titus. I am a field CISO at Abnormal AI.
We're thrilled to be talking with you today about security awareness training. And this isn't a challenge that's new. So it's always been focused on how we can better prepare our workforce for the threats that they're facing and of course, be able to deliver on the requirements for each organization's compliance projects as well. So we'll take you through the steps to protect your people in your organization most effectively. Let's set the stage with some context. Security awareness training has historically been viewed as a compliance requirement, something organizations need to check a box for auditors, insurers, and the board. But the reality is it's so much bigger than that. Security awareness is just one piece of a larger mission, managing human risk. So Patty, I'd love to get your insight in talking about this current problem space and what you're seeing from a CISO perspective.
Yeah, so this has always been one of those things that kind of sticks in your craw as a CISO. You train people, you run them through security awareness, you might give out little giveaways like the top 10 security tips, and still the continued social engineering, clicking on links. It almost feels like we're on this hamster wheel going around in circles and we're not really making progress. And in all fairness, the human component is, people are being targeted more because the technology that the threat actors are using against us is getting so much better. So I feel like we train people on one thing, like back in the day, don't stick a USB into your computer if you don't know where it came from, right? And so that was like yesterday's problem. And here we are today in much more advanced, much more sophisticated threats that have been coming. So, we've got to figure out a better way to do this. And I remember way back when I was at TSA, and it feels like forever ago, but it was really only a few decades ago. And Kip Hawley, our administrator, said to me, "When are you going to stop using humans as your first line of defense?" And at the time, that was really all we had. We tried to train people on what to do, what not to do. And the technology today is getting to the point where now we have a better story to tell using newer AI type of capabilities. I wish I would have had it 20 years ago.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on a great point around generic training. It really isn't meeting what we're seeing from attackers. The fact of the matter is today's attacks are hyper-personalized, and there's usually a ton of reconnaissance that goes on in the background. So that way, these employees are really easy to fall victim to these attacks. So I truly think that, like you mentioned, embedding AI into the defenses to keep up with how attackers are using AI is crucial to the success of this marketplace.
Yeah, and I to be honest with you, I hear people say things like, the humans are the weakest link. And we really have to stop saying that, because they're not. The weakest link are the fact that we can't keep up with the changing threat landscape as it relates to educating our teams. And I really want to emphasize the education versus training. So I think you and I spoke about this. My famous little line is, you can teach a monkey to push a button and get a snack. And but what we're not doing enough of is really educating our people on why not to click on the link. Why should that matter to them? There's a little bit more media around ransomware attacks, and it came in through a phishing email, and that's getting some news. But I think really the big thing is we've got to educate people more on, this is what's really coming at you. And I love it when a CISO says, that's too realistic. That phishing campaign is too realistic. Oh, well, that's what we need, is realistic threat simulations going to our employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on a really important point of moving past the generic simulations. Not only that, but having training content that's relevant to employees, arming them with the fact that here are example attacks that we know are targeting you and our organization. So this is what you should be really made aware of.
Yeah, and you brought up the point earlier of all this reconnaissance work, and AI is making that super easy, right? Go tell ChatGPT to go, tell me who Patty Titus, the CISO, is, and it will bring lots of rich data into the conversation. And then that information can be culled into, oh, Patty Titus is the CISO at X company, and this company does Y. We can craft this message to look realistic. Or we look at the outside and we're able to figure out what capabilities are being used. So let's say we're really good with our job descriptions and we put must have Palo Alto experience, CrowdStrike experience, and we start naming all these technologies. Well, now I can impersonate a CrowdStrike or a Palo Alto employee and try to get attention through that. Maybe I'm going to send you a note saying, hey, we have this really cool event happening, just register here and set up a login credential. So there's just so many ways now that threat actors can cull information and create that targeted attack, that spear phishing, specific to an individual. And depending on who you are in the company, you carry a higher risk than someone else in the company might, because maybe you're the CFO and you have access to all of the financial information, or maybe you happen to be the person that's negotiating your cyber insurance. Heaven forbid that the bad guys find out how much your cyber insurance coverage is, because that's what they'll ransom you for. So there's so much information out there, and it's scary that it's being used against our employees.
It is really scary. And I think that the other interesting thing about security awareness training is looking at the threats that employees are faced against. But then, of course, we're setting up our security operations teams for failure, because these solutions are so highly manual to operate, and the whole content creation aspect of security awareness training still continues to be highly manual with a lot of traditional solutions. And so I think, like you mentioned, the combination of the threats that are happening today, along with these generic solutions that continue to be highly manual, it's really making these programs impossible to scale.
Or you create, hey, this month, we saw a phishing attack that mirrored a Cisco service provider support person targeting all of our IT people. So we'll create a campaign around that next month. Well, that data is already outdated. That threat actor's already moved on to something different. So this is the challenge. And okay, that's great. That works for your IT people. How are you going to craft something that takes that same social engineering aspect and tailor it towards your accounting and finance teams, or your accounts payable team, or your procurement people? I mean, this is the problem with that static data, and it's not real world. And that's where we have to do something different. We've got to make changes.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue into how Abnormal is leveraging AI to address these challenges. Focusing on Abnormal's one of our most recent products, AI Phishing Coach, our security awareness training solution. I do think it's really important to call out just how hyper personalized these simulations are, like you mentioned, by using the context from real attacks, defanging it, and then sending it over to employees that have similar operations and roles in the organization.
Yeah, so that's this. When I joined the company, it wasn't too long ago either. This was a really exciting product to hear about, because it addresses that stale training material, and I love the defanging comment. So a phishing campaign comes in, or a phish for an individual, the abnormal behavior analytics in email catch it, and then by defanging it, making it not have any of the links that are malicious, then sending it on to the intended victim and seeing if they actually interact with that email. And if they do, well, I'd like you to tell how that actually works, because this is, I was over the moon when we announced this at RSA this past year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear a lot of excitement from our customers as well. So when an employee does fall victim or click that phishing simulation link, they're redirected to our just-in-time coaching landing page, truly taking that coaching perspective, walking through the different attributes of that simulation, being able to explain, hey, here's a domain that looks similar to a vendor that you might work with, but here are some minor syntactical differences that you really should be mindful of next time that would justify a reverse domain lookup, or even just the context that Abnormal is great at calling out. For example, the urgency around a request to assign a DocuSign. Those are all pieces that we walk through with training employees around the real behavior that you need to call out when facing real attacks today. So I think this is not only preparing people for the reality of the threats that are targeting their organization, but it's also helping them build lasting behavioral change.
Yeah, and the fact that it's actually something that was targeting them, it was coming into their inbox. So it's real. And I have had people say, "Oh, this just looks too genuine." Well, that's the intention, is we've got to start training our people on reality and not static, old, aged data. And I love our avatar. I just, you know, it's so much easier to take criticism from a robot than it is to take criticism from your boss. So the fact that this avatar pops up and has a conversation with you versus, your boss calling you up going, "Hey, you ended up on the phishing report," much less intimidating. And I just, and you can talk back and forth to, via email, when you get this, yes, it is, or no, it's not phishing. There's some interactive components to it as well that I think, although that's not part of the phishing companion or the phishing coach, it is another part of that email security component, that when you send something in and say, is this a phishing email or not, our system will actually communicate back and forth with you. So you're getting other real-time feedback on, yes, it is. And then you can have a conversation via email with the AI, and the AI will answer your questions. Here's why it is, and here's why it's not. And so there's another component, even over and above our phishing coach, that interactive behavioral analytic data that we have is contextualized and then fed back to the employee in a way that they can consume it and it can answer questions. I just think that is it's game changing.
Introducing the human element in a way that is powered by AI. There's so many different aspects about AI Fishing Coach that are powered by agentic AI or a generative AI. For example, the creation of the fishing simulations, the scheduling of the simulations, the generation of those just-in-time coaching landing pages, our video training content that you mentioned with our avatar, all being AI run. Um, Still having that human aspect, but being able to automate and take so much of that manual burden off of teams' plates so that way they can scale. I truly think that this is something that's disrupting the space. And frankly, the most comprehensive use that I've seen of AI embedded into security awareness training in the market today.
I completely agree with you, Sydney. And I think, as I was emailing back and forth with a couple of other CISOs, one of them had posted something on LinkedIn about, this phishing simulation stuff is just not working. Why are we still doing it? So I took the opportunity to have a sidebar conversation, and it's super interesting when we talk about what is it that we really need. Um, it's it's what our product development team has developed, and so when I share a little bit about it, they get super excited because they might have one person who's focused on strategy, governance, security awareness training. And that one person would love to be freed up to do more valuable reports and work rather than trying to chase down the CISO to get them to stand in front of a video camera and write a script for them to read. I mean, just, we just need to, first of all, CISOs are not necessarily, we're not all like video ready. And reading a script, you can tell when we're reading a script, trust me. And so it's so much better to have AI generate the content, and it's real for what's happening against that company in the vertical market and the industry that company is in, highly customized, highly tailored to the individual and the company and their role in the company.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point around the mindset shift of how security awareness training is changing. Like you mentioned, being able to address the threats, focusing on changing behavior. I think this is a really important thing for us to double click on is the way that we measure effectiveness of security awareness training. For far long, have we been focused on click rates or pass fail rates?
Yeah.
And I really think what we need to look at is the reduction of phishing incidents happening in an organization. And a contributing factor to that should be your effective security awareness training program.
Yeah. So what I really like is the fact that we are sending on real data that's targeting people. It was funny when one CISO who actually has adopted our capability, I was chatting with them at dinner, and they said it's almost like a badge of honor as to who the most targeted individuals in the company are. So
Mhm.
in the quarterly reporting, they're like, look, I've moved up to the #1 spot. I am the most targeted employee. And maybe it's your CFO, I don't know, but it's really funny. Once you start showing them the data, I think it really hits home for them. And I think the other part of it is because they're seeing this, because we're working on making this change and making them more aware, the unintended consequence is it's going to have that trickle down effect into all of their digital computing. And so we want healthy digital citizens on the internet, not just in our companies, but we want them to take those hygiene home with them to protect them at home. And I think this is one way that we can reinforce that behavior in a corporate environment.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to pick your brain, Patty, for CISOs who are struggling to transition from this kind of traditional security awareness training mindset into feeling comfortable leveraging some of these real threats as phishing simulations, what's some advice that you would share with them?
Well, so first of all, we're always afraid to like use a real email that came in that somebody fell prey to. We're like afraid because it's kind of like shaming, right? So it's got Bob Smith's name on it, and everybody, no matter what you do to obfuscate the data, you can redact information out of the email. But at the end of the day, everybody knows it came into accounting and finance. And then it's like, hey, who did that? Who clicked on it? Like corporate grapevines are alive and well. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to create a shaming capability. What we really want to do is use it to educate. And that's why actually sending on the real threat that came into the individual is really the best way to do it. So it's not, you're not getting everybody else's threats. You're getting things that are really relevant for you. So I think first and foremost, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself about the way we've been doing it isn't working. Period. It's just not. No matter how great we are at it, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. We're all hyper focused on let's give people away, let's play games, let's get people excited about this. People are busy and have jobs to do. And while that stuff is fun and everybody likes a t-shirt that somebody else paid for, the best thing to do is to start looking at technology that can really tailor the conversation to what's realistic. And we have to stop being afraid to use the real threats that are targeting our companies and tell people. I don't know why we want to hold that information, because it's so important that people, I don't know how many companies I worked at, Sydney, where people would say to me, well, who cares about our data? Like, nobody cares about our data. Everybody cares about our data. And, or you get the person who says, nobody cares about me. I mean, I'm just a fill in the blank. But you're a way to get to somebody who has more valuable information. So everyone is important. Everyone in the company needs this, not just those high risk employees. Everybody needs it. And everybody needs to understand that they're all equally targeted and can equally create that dominoes falling. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think learning security best practices with being able to identify a threat, that's not just a valuable skill for your work life. That's also a valuable skill that's going to translate into your personal life too. Unless on the off chance you don't have a personal email, which I think is rare to none at these days.
that's true.
Awesome. Well, I think I would be remiss to not spend some time hopping into, like you mentioned, some of the background around the context that's shared between Abnormal's products with AI Phishing Coach, really providing that hyper-personalized training that, to your point, truly does change behavior and moves much beyond generic templates to generate those simulations based off of real threats stopped by Abnormal, specifically our inbound email security offering. We take those real attack context, we defang the threats, normalize them, but then, of course, send them as true phishing simulations based off of that person's behavior. So, your day to day operations, and of course, what role you have within the organization. So that way you are prepared for the threats that are targeting your business function. I think the other thing to call out is that everything runs on autopilot. The campaign cadence, the difficulty, the content creation, all of that is handled by Abnormal's AI. So you can free up your teams from that manual setup while also being able to reduce risk. Of course, the piece around being able to confirm whether your employees accurately reported those simulations is where we start to tie into our AI security mailbox offering, which really checks out the autonomous factor of triaging user-reported email threats. So I'm really just excited to see how we're closing the loop on not only this hyper-personalized security awareness training solution, but also delivering it autonomously.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
Perfect. Well, I recognize that we've covered a lot today, from why traditional security awareness training hasn't worked to how AI can make awareness training smarter, more engaging, and more effective at reducing risk. So thank you so much, Patty, for taking the time today and talking with all of us around how we can move from awareness to action with reducing human risk.
Yeah, just one word to my CISO friends out there, my security professional friends. This is something that we know we've needed. The technology and the capabilities are here. We need to not be worried about embracing AI to help us with tasks that are more aligned and appropriate for AI. This is one of those capabilities that's really worth taking a look at.
Perfect. And if you'd like to learn more about abnormal AI and how AI Phishing Coach can transform your training programs, please visit Abnormal AI, request a demo, or reach out to us directly at information@abnormal.ai. And we'd love to show you how this works in action. Thank you so much for the time today.